Greetings and welcome to the 7th episode of Morrowind Modding Interviews. With me tonight is Zini, project lead behind Morrowind. Thanks for agreeing to this interview.
You're very welcome.
Alright, and we're going to start out with a few basic questions, the first of which is, when did you first start playing Morrowind and the Elder Scrolls in general?
My first Elder Scrolls game was in fact Morrowind, and I was slightly late to the party. I think I started playing in 2004, because up to 2002 my private machine was running RISC OS instead of Windows, so I really didn't have access to anything that could run Morrowind. But turned out that RISC OS really was not going anywhere, so then I decided in 2003 to get my first Windows box, my first private one. This was a XP machine, really hated it, but got me into gaming then again. I started playing various stuff, shopping around, ended up in the Gothic series, really liked it. Gothic 1 and 2 at least. And then, when I was through with that, I started to look around for similar games. So, and that's how I ended up with Morrowind. Was kinda a disappointment at first. Compared to Gothic, kinda empty, not lifeless a bit, I would say. Didn't really hold my interest for long. Probably would have said goodbye to it within a week or so, and that might have been the end of it. But then I started to get into the lore, and I also started to play around with mods. And eventually I also started playing around with the construction set a bit, and that kept my interest for quite a while.
It's interesting you mentioned the Gothic series, because that's an RPG series that's rather similar to the Elder Scrolls, isn't it?
On the surface, yes. But if you go into details, it's really not similar. No, can't say that. Gothic has much stronger focus on storytelling, and it's not really a sandbox game. Open world, yes. Sandbox, no.
Interesting, so it's more like, say, the Witcher titles?
Yes, I would agree with that.
Well, moving on, what's the story behind your screen name, Zini?
That's not a very interesting story. That was a name I used at some point in real life, a nickname. And when I had to pick one for internet, well, I just used that. Was comfortable with being called that, and that's really the end of the story.
Now, obviously you've been a big part of projects like Ultima IX Redemption and Morrowind, but have you made any independent mods for your own use, and if so, what were they?
Nothing that got ever finished. I played a lot around with the construction set. Made a city here, some quests there, and other stuff. Never made a house mod. And really never got anything finished there. Was really only playing around.
Now, never made a house mod. Most players end up making a house mod at some point in time. Any particular reason why you never got around to doing that?
The houses you get from the Great Free Houses, I liked particularly a lot, really a lot. The way that's built up there and all the stuff, and I was really happy with that. Considering the thought it would have taken to get something of similar level, no. Couldn't be asked, really.
Now, I'm sort of curious, can you tell us a bit about Morrowind? How did the project get started, and what's your role there?
Okay, that's a longer story. OpenMW is a replacement for the vanilla Morrowind executable. the actual piece of software that runs Morrowind. Story behind it. Well, I actually did not start it. That was started by a guy named, I hope I pronounced that correctly, Nikolai Korslund. And that was way, way back. He originally wrote that in a programming language D, which was kind of a problem because barely anyone knew that language and barely anyone cared to learn it. So when that came along, I was interested in it, partly because of my involvement with Redemption. As a good open source citizen, I got in contact with him, filed bug reports and so on, tested all the stuff, but didn't really get into the actual development originally. Eventually, Nikolai saw that that was going nowhere. It was basically a one-man show. So, and then he decided to start from scratch in C++. That was the point where I joined in then. And as for my roles, well, originally it was just coding contributor, but eventually Nikolai lost interest in the project, and so I took over the role of lead developer.
Now, I'm sort of curious, since most people probably recognize OpenMW as being a big team project these days, not really a one-man show as you describe, how long has OpenMW been in development?
If we only count the C++ version, well, the current one, that would be, I think, 2010.
So, what made you guys decide to start making a new engine for Morrowind in the first place? I mean, well, the C++ version, I guess. Was there some particular limitation that you came across that felt needed to be addressed?
That basically happened in two stages. With Redemption, we are pushing the Morrowind engine to its limit. And it doesn't work overly great under these conditions. There are glitches typically. Not critical, but not great. So that was a point where I started to help out a bit. And lots later, we found indeed a critical limitation in the vanilla engine that basically could have killed Redemption. Has to do with accessing objects and in particular NPCs in cells that haven't been loaded yet. At that point, I put basically all my effort into OpenMW.
Now, how far along would you say OpenMW is towards release? I mean, obviously, it'll be done when it's done, and there was a release a couple of weeks ago. But can you give us a rough estimate for when you think the finished 1.0 version might be done?
We are more or less done. There are very few features missing, mostly smaller stuff. There's also a bit of bug fixing to do, and yeah, performance. Problem with that, the performance bottleneck we currently have is mostly in a third-party piece of software, the Ogre rendering engine. We're kinda waiting for the version 2.0 to come out. We haven't really decided yet what to do. Options are basically to wait or eventually at some point grab a pre-release version of 2.0 and then make do with that. I'm pretty sure that we will have a release next year.
Well, it would certainly be great if it releases next year. I know I've been looking forward to it, and so has pretty much everyone in the community, I think.
Yeah, I heard that from your other interviews.
Oh yes, it's been a regular interview question for a while. Now, since we mentioned that, there's been a lot of hype surrounding OpenMW in the Morrowind community, and I think everyone has their own wish list of features to be added or de-hard-coded. As someone working closely on the project, How soon after release do you think it'll be before we start seeing things like world spaces, dynamic water levels, and new weather effects? Or is maybe all that just a little unrealistic?
Well, we need to get our editor ready first, because without that we can't really do new features. I mean, things like like world spaces with the vanilla editor, that's just not going to work. Can't really give you any prognosis on that. Editor is still a bit behind OpenMW. Not critically so, we made some progress, but behind. As for the development after the editor is ready, well, version 1.2, 1.1, 1.2, and so on. But definitely on my list are custom attributes, custom skills, and world spaces. I'll have to do a bit of groundwork, but after that I will straight jump into the attributes and then either into the skills or the world spaces. So you can basically expect these in 1.1 or 1.2. Custom weather effects are a bit more complicated. We will certainly make the existing ones more flexible and also allow custom weathers. That should also pretty soon happen. Anything beyond that may take a bit longer.
I know everyone's pretty excited about world spaces, so it's good to hear that it's going to be pretty soon after release.
Yeah, it's kind of an important feature.
Now, you mentioned this earlier, but before Morrowind, you were working on another project called Ultima IX Redemption, a total conversion for Morrowind. Can you tell us anything about that project?
Yes, so first, I'm technically still working at that. A while back, the Redemption team came together and we talked about how to continue from there. Then it was decided we will move from Morrowind to OpenMW. And then tasks were handed out. My task for Redemption is basically getting OpenMW ready. But formally, I'm still working on it. And once our editor is ready, I will also continue a bit of modding there. The project, yeah, Redemption. That's actually never a very long story. Let me see. So, when I started playing around in the original editor, after a while I don't remember actually where, of a request for help for a project based on the Morrowind engine for new Ultima game. And no, that was not Redemption. That was a game called Ultima X, The New King. I got started to work on that. We did basically the basic stuff there, groundwork, features and such. My first task there was a blacksmithing system, which I'm still pretty proud of. So that went on for a while, and then we got to talk with another team that was working on a project called Redemption, Ultima IX. That was a replacement for the original Ultima IX game. These guys basically wanted to do a lot of things different because the original game was kinda disappointment for the Ultima community. So, but this problem was deeply in trouble. They had already switched engines once, the leader had disappeared, there were lost files, basically going nowhere. We talked a while and then decided to join forces. We would first finish up Redemption and then do New King. That did not work out so well. We didn't really get all that much manpower from the other team. And when we looked at the files we got from them, there were not a lot of stuff and in a very rough state. Anyway, we continued from there, basically, and that's where we still are.
Oh yes, Ultima IX has been in production for quite a while, hasn't it? I mean, I remember coming across a trailer that I had downloaded years ago, I think from around 2006. So, obviously the project's been around for a while.
Yep, about 10 years, I think, in its current form. We had a lot of ups and downs, really, on the Morrowind engine, the vanilla, was responsible for lots of downs lately.
So, you mentioned before that the Ultima IX Redemption project was going to switch over to OpenMW. So, do you know how far away they are from finishing their project?
Basically, they can't finish it without OpenMW. There are critical limitations that make it impossible.
Could you go into detail about what those limitations are? Is it AI or world spaces?
AI is a reason, but really it's the remote access to objects in cells that hasn't been loaded yet. That is always problematic with vanilla Morrowind. Absolutely no problem at all with OpenMW.
Sort of moving to a different type of question, what draws you to modding video games in general?
Oh, that's actually a complicated question. I don't have a good answer to that. Just a very creative person. And yeah, well, that's a very creative hobby, so it's a good fit.
I'm sort of curious, since you probably do a lot of programming with the OpenMW team, do you have an educational background or profession in that particular type of field?
Yes, you could say that, so most of my coding skills are self-trained. That's really for all the really good guys the case in this field.
I was just looking at the next question, and, well, the answer seems rather obvious. It was, have you been influenced by any non-Elder Scrolls games when you mod, but given that you were working on an Ultima project and you've played the Gothic series, it's probably safe to say yes, I would say.
These two, yes. Primarily Gothic 1 and 2, let's forget anything that come after that. And Ultima, primarily 4 and 5, I would say. Later ones wasn't really my thing.
Given that you've had a lot of experience working on team projects, can you tell us a bit about the planning process that goes into such massive efforts like OpenMW?
Well, OpenMW up to now is actually kinda easy. We know exactly what we need to do. Just need to look at vanilla Morrowind. Now, to realize that, also not overly complicated. We have various pieces of infrastructure there. A bug tracker, where we list individual features and tasks, line them up in roadmaps and such. We have a wiki, where we document stuff, and most of the planning happens in team with forum threads.
Now, for a project like OpenMW, I imagine there's quite a lot of documentation that needs to go on, right?
Not overly. We have a bunch of pages on our wiki, but really the code is the documentation.
Now, I'm sort of curious, have you had any experience with the other creation kits for the Elder Scrolls games? Like the ones for Oblivion and Skyrim? And if so, did you prefer them over Morrowind's construction set, and have they influenced the OpenMW project in any way?
No, I never touched them. Not at all. Well, wasn't really that interested in Oblivion and Skyrim. And so, no.
Alright, moving on to a different topic then. Do you listen to any music while you mod? And if so, what do you like to listen to?
Occasionally. Well, I assume when you say mod, you also include coding OpenMW, because that's actually not really modding. When I listen to music, it's mostly something a bit more atmospheric. Unless I'm debugging, then it's mostly rock or occasionally some type of heavy metal.
Now, the OpenMW project, are you guys planning to use a scripting language for OpenCS that's similar to what's already in Morrowind? Or have you gotten any ideas from Skyrim's Papyrus scripting language?
That is a very hot topic. We had some heated discussions about that in the forum. And eventually I had put my foot down and make a decision there, which maybe left a few people angry. So my decision was for keeping the original language and extend it, improve it. That language got quite a bit of hate, which I honestly don't really understand. I mean, it will never win a beauty contest, and there are some things really critically missing, but overall, I think the language is okay, in particular for the task we are using it. After all, most mod developers who write scripts don't really have a background in software development. And for these guys, it's relatively easy to pick up this language. Now, the implementation of this scripting language in vanilla Morrowind, that is a completely different issue. Warning, strong language incoming here. This is a bloody piece of crap. The VM, the virtual machine, really unsuitable for the task, I would say. I don't really blame the original developers there. They couldn't imagine that it would be used for something as complex as today's mods. The script compiler, on the other hand, oh dear. Nope, can't excuse that. Really not. This thing does really no error checking at all. Pain in the ass. Not to mention there's also lots of really unnecessary limitations.
Oh yes, I think every Morrowind modder that's dabbled with scripting has probably had some trouble with the scripting compiler at one time or another. Like they'll get into game and there'll just be a dozen errors that pop up right away.
Well, if the errors pop up, that's okay, I think. The problem are really the errors that not pop up. Problems are just silently ignored. And for at least some time it may look like it's working, but it's not really.
Now, I was going to ask, since I know this was mentioned recently on the forums at OpenMW, well, recently as in within the last few months, ZeniMax sort of semi-legally contacted you guys about the mobile development platform for OpenMW, and I believe development on that has now ceased. Can you comment on the status for the mobile OpenMW?
That was a storm in a water glass, really. There was a lot of misunderstanding. It's actually surprising how many people don't really understand what OpenMW is in the first place. We got to an agreement there, which basically says we can continue doing what we're doing. We just have to make some modifications how we do PR about it, how we advertise it.
So, development for the mobile platforms is still technically continuing, but you're just not going to advertise it as much?
More or less that's it, yeah.
Alright, sort of moving into a different range of topics. Are there any mods or modders that currently have your attention in the community outside the Open Morrowind project?
Well, oh dear. There are kind of few mods and mod developers that got my attention lately, but not in any good way. We recently started to test mods out more and running in lots of broken stuff. Really, although my reaction to these people is basically raising my fist angrily. Okay, I should explain that more. It's not really their fault. There are these kind of script errors. They are all over the place. In our mods, they're on the default ESM files, Morrowind Tribunal and Blood Moon. Even in Redemption, I made this kind of mistakes. The problem here is really the script compiler that does no error checking. Blech.
Oh, so more problems that have boiled down to the script compiler again, I see.
Yep.
Now, so you've been testing all these mods in the Open Morrowind engine and encountering all these issues, but have you actually played any mods for fun?
Not recently. It's actually been a while since I played Morrowind. Might get into it again, depending on... No, I won't say depending. Pretty sure. As soon as the Morrowind modding community produces some more mods that uses the advanced features of later OpenMW versions, pretty sure I'm getting into playing again with a lot of mods.
Oh yes, we're already starting to see a few mods that take advantage of Open Morrowind's engine, at least as far as mapping on models goes.
A few, yes. Also bond models. There was one case, I don't remember the details. Think it had something to do with remote object access. Where basically the guy was making a mod that would allow you to access a chest or something that was basically in your home, even when you were far away.
Sort of sounds like the Ender chest from Minecraft, really.
Yep. That's a good comparison.
Now, what do you think about the other Elder Scrolls games? I know you mentioned that you didn't really play Skyrim or Oblivion, but is there any particular reason for that, and do you have an opinion on this series in general?
Well, I played them a bit, did mods for them. Oblivion played actually a bit more on it and finally decided that I hated it. Prime reason, scaling. I absolutely hate content scaling. That's one of the few game mechanics that I think shouldn't exist. Skyrim, well, I played a bit. Not really my thing. Think it improved actually on some aspects of Morrowind, well, and Oblivion, but at the cost of heavily dumbing down things. Not really excited over the direction it's taking. What I'm still actively playing is the online version, ESO.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Most of our previous interviewees haven't really played Elder Scrolls Online at all. What do you think about that game?
The question is still open. Currently, I enjoy it a lot. But I can't say that that will still be the case in, let's say, 6 months from here. That game has issues. First, from a technical point of view, there's a certain range of quality software quality that I would call acceptable. Currently, ISO is at the bottom end of that. Then on the other side, ISO really doesn't seem to know what it wants to be. Moving to different directions, can't see clearly yet what it's going to become.
Oh yes, they certainly have been adding / changing a lot of features over the months, and I believe they're getting ready to implement their new justice system in the next month or so, and that's going to be a very different change for the game, because they're making crimes possible now.
That is correct. There's a lot of changes coming up in the next version. Justice system, a champion system where basically revamped the entire endgame, various stuff. Absolutely no idea how that will turn out.
Well, Elder Scrolls Online, you could almost say it's sort of still in development, really.
It's an MMO. These are always in development.
Oh, very true. World of Warcraft is still coming out with expansions, even 10 years later.
Exactly.
Now, sort of moving back to Morrowind, what do you think makes the Morrowind modding community so vibrant after more than a decade?
Morrowind is kinda in a lucky position there, I think. The first Elder Scrolls series, lots of lore, very interesting. But also, Morrowind was one of the first games that had a construction set where you really could get into modding, where you had a lot of power to change things. But at the same time, it was still pretty easy. When I look at later games, if you want a good mod, you probably want to get in voice acting and lots of other stuff. It's a lot more difficult. I think Morrowind kinda hit a sweet spot there.
Oh yes, some of the features that are in Oblivion and Skyrim, like voice acting, put serious limitations on the amount of stuff you're able to produce in a mod, particularly if, like, say, you're a quest modder. It's like you can only have so many characters because you can only have so many voices, or they're silent and then they just sort of stand out.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's not such a problem if you have a large development team, but if you're a solo modder, that's hard.
Oh yes, and I think the Morrowind modding community probably is mostly solo modders at this point.
That's true, I think.
Now, do you think there's anything the Morrowind modding community should be doing in order to continue to expand and grow in the coming years?
I think the community is doing as well as you can expect. Really, any new impulses now, they need to come from us, from OpenMW. I think that will make a huge change. Well, first, there's really a lot of things you can do with OpenMW that you couldn't do with vanilla. Even the 1.0 version has already lots of advantages, and with 1.1 and 1.2 we will push out a lot more. So that's the first thing. Then on the other side, with our new editor, I expect the productivity of modders to increase greatly. I'll give you 2 examples. There's, well, we already mentioned that, script compiler. Lots of problems. You don't get proper error reports, either stuff going wrong in the game or you didn't notice anything at all. Not a problem with our script compiler. That thing is strict. We'll report any error, anything that's wrong. Clearly with line, column and everything. That should save a whole lot of time debugging and will save also a lot of headaches. Then second example I could name, when we develop a mod, we typically create something, test. It's probably not perfect, so we make modifications, then we test again, more modification, test again, and so on, and so on, and so on. You do that by saving, then firing up Morrowind, then somehow get in a position where you can test, COC, maybe some custom stuff in the ESP file, and so on. Not a problem really, but cumbersome. Wastes time. With OpenMW and our editor, just click a button. Then the editor will immediately fire up OpenMW, put you right in the spot that you are looking at with any adjustments, added items, quest modification, and so on that you configured. It should save really a whole lot of time.
Now that certainly does sound pretty appealing. I know in the past I've spent probably close to 50 to 60 hours just doing testing, particularly on more complicated quest mods. Because I have to go into game, I have to go through the entire process of doing the quest, and then finally get to the problem or an error, and then I have to go through, fix it, start it all up again, then get back to that same point.
Exactly.
Now, a lot of modders have kind of pinned their hopes on OpenMW. There has been a lot of talk of, say, a new golden age of Morrowind modding, a new renaissance of Morrowind modding. Now, would you say those hopes are a little over-optimistic, or do you think they're right on the spot?
I absolutely think that will happen. We're already in a decent position now, with all the new advantages that OpenMW will bring us. Golden Age, yes.
Now, another quick question I have is, do you think the Morrowind modding community should be doing more in the field of promotion? Right now we have a lot of Morrowind forum boards, like Morrowind Reddit, the Morrowind Steam forums, that aren't really used to promote modding so much. And a lot of major projects don't even really post there very often. Do you think those are resources we should be utilizing more?
Yeah, definitely. With the OpenMW project, we have several guys that focus on basically PR. I think that's actually necessary. The people don't really come to you on their own. Internet's just too big. You need to make a bit of noise.
Oh yes. So would you say that we should also maybe expand into social networks like Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr?
Ugh, Facebook I hate. Wouldn't touch that. It's creepy. Everything else, yes, definitely.
Now, sort of wrapping up, is there any advice you'd like to give to budding new Morrowind modders out there looking to release their first mod, or possibly modders looking to join a team project like Redemption or OpenMW?
Well, for solo modder, I would say, just go ahead and do it. Accept that your first piece of work is probably not great, do it anyway. Accept criticism, and also understand that when people criticize your work, that's not a personal attack. For projects with an established team, if you want to join them, well, one advice I can really give is make sure that you actually have the time and the dedication to follow through with that. Then for people working on such projects, nothing is more frustrating if you spend time and energy to guide a new guy around, help him out, get him set in, and then you never hear anything from them again.
Oh yes, this does seem to happen a lot with particularly team projects. Like Temporary Built has a showcase review process where a new modder has to submit a showcase, and then they usually have to go through multiple iterations. And a lot of times, by the time they actually become a Temporary Built member, sometimes they don't even finish a single interior claim.
Yeah, that's similar. We have somewhat similar review process with Redemption, not so much with OpenMW, but particularly with OpenMW, I would say the dropout rate before people actually started to work is around 60-70%.
That's a really high rate.
Yep, it is.
Well, finally, is there anyone in the community you'd like to give a shout out to?
Of course, the Redemption team. Beyond that, I can give you a shout out for the people who write mods with broken scripts that I have to work around, but no, I think we shouldn't do that.
Yes, that whole scripting scene is still causing headache, obviously.
Yeah, massively. Just got 2 new bugs in, I think yesterday. Will probably take me the entire next week to find a way to work around them. Nasty.
Oh, anyway, that's pretty much all the questions I have for you now, so I guess that pretty much wraps things up, so thanks for doing agreeing to this interview.
You're welcome, it was fun.
Alright, that concludes our interview with Zini. Very interesting, lot of topics about OpenMW were covered. And, well, certainly a project to look forward to in the future, especially if it makes its 1.0 release by the end of next year. Next week we're supposed to have Yeti finally from the Skyrim Home of the Nords team. So hopefully we'll have that ready for next week, which is December 24th, I believe, Christmas Eve. And, well, I guess I'll see you guys then. Thanks for watching and listening, and I'll see you guys next time.